I gave up everything they offered me to deliver the message God showed me. They came to me with smiles, polished words, and promises wrapped in gold. They said I could have influence, power, and admiration from every corner if I just played by their rules. They told me I could lead, that I could shape things if only I agreed to say what they wanted said, to do what they wanted done. It was a tempting offer. They knew exactly what to appeal to: comfort, control, legacy. They painted a picture of an easy road, one where applause never stopped, where every door opened before I even reached for the handle. But there's always a price when the world makes you an offer. It doesn't give freely, it trades. It trades your voice for their agenda, your conviction for their comfort, your truth for their version of success. I remember sitting across the table from men who had already sold out. They wore the finest suits, smiled the biggest smiles, but behind their eyes I saw emptiness. They had taken the deal. They had everything the world said mattered, yet they had nothing left inside. I could feel it in the air, the quiet fear that if they ever spoke the truth, it would all be taken from them. That fear was their prison, and they called it success. The offers kept coming bigger each time. They said, "You can change everything if you just compromise a little." That word, little, was the trap, because compromise never stays little. It grows, it spreads, it eats away at your purpose until you forget who you were before the applause. And I knew deep down that if I accepted what they offered, I'd lose something that no amount of money or recognition could ever replace: the message God showed me. So I turned down their invitations, refused their staged photo ops, ignored the easy road. And when I did, they looked shocked, as if no one had ever said no before. They didn't understand that real power doesn't come from the people sitting around those tables. It comes from standing when everyone else bows, from speaking when silence is safer, from walking away when the world begs you to stay. It happened in a moment I can never forget. It wasn't in a grand hall or a spotlighted stage. It was quiet, still, almost unsettling. The kind of silence that makes you listen deeper than your ears can hear. I had been surrounded by noise for so long, the noise of people, opinions, strategies, offers, all telling me who to be and what to say. But in that stillness, everything else faded, and there was only one voice left. It wasn't demanding, it wasn't persuasive, it was powerful in its peace. It was the voice of God showing me something the world couldn't see. It wasn't a vision of comfort or applause. It was a revelation of truth, of purpose, of what I was called to do. When God shows you something, it's not a suggestion, it's a calling. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The message burned into my heart like fire. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about truth, justice, and courage. I realized that everything around me, the noise, the offers, the promises, was designed to distract me from that moment. I saw how easy it was to get lost chasing what shines instead of what saves. In that encounter, I felt both small and unshakable. Small, because I understood how limited human strength is compared to divine power. Unshakable, because I knew I had been chosen to speak something that wasn't mine to keep. It was bigger than me, and it terrified me. I knew following that message would cost me everything they had just promised. It would make me unpopular in rooms that once cheered for me. It would turn allies into critics and comfort into chaos. But I also knew I couldn't walk away. The moment I accepted that truth, I felt the weight of obedience settle in. I knew I was stepping into something that would test me, strip me, and shape me. I didn't see the full picture, but I knew this: once God gives you a message, you don't negotiate with fear or fame. You deliver it, no matter who listens, no matter what it costs, because some truths are too divine to stay hidden. The moment I chose to obey, everything began to change. The applause started fading, the invitations stopped coming, and the people who once called me a friend began to disappear. That's the cost of obedience when you decide to follow what God showed you instead of what the world celebrates. It's not the kind of price you pay with money, it's the kind you pay with comfort, reputation, and peace of mind. You start realizing that obedience isn't glamorous, it's lonely, it's heavy, and it's sacred. Everyone loves a hero until that hero refuses to play by their script. They called me stubborn. They said I was throwing away everything I worked for, and maybe from their view I was. But obedience doesn't make sense to those who haven't seen what you've seen. I wasn't chasing success anymore. I was chasing alignment with something divine. The truth is, when God calls you to do something, it rarely comes with applause. It comes with resistance, misunderstanding, and 100 chances to turn back. And every time you refuse to quit, the cost goes up. I felt it in every decision I made. I had to walk away from rooms that used to define me, from people who said they believed in me, but only when I was useful to them. I had to silence the voices that said I was making a mistake, even when they sounded reasonable. Obedience teaches you how to listen to God above the crowd. It strips away your dependence on validation, forcing you to stand on faith alone. The hardest part isn't losing what you had, it's learning to trust that what's left is enough. It's waking up every morning knowing you chose the narrow road when the wide one looks so much easier. But in that struggle, something powerful begins to form, a strength that doesn't come from approval, a peace that doesn't depend on comfort, and a faith that doesn't crumble under pressure. That's what obedience builds. It doesn't give you the life you planned, it gives you the life you were meant for. It's the cost of carrying a message too sacred to be compromised, too divine to be delayed, too powerful to be ignored. When you decide to stand for a message that comes from God, the world doesn't cheer you on, it tests you. Suddenly, the support you thought was permanent disappears, replaced by whispers, doubts, and sometimes outright hostility. People who once nodded at your every word now question your judgment. They wonder why you won't bend, why you won't take the easy path, why you won't accept what everyone else thinks you deserve. Standing alone against the system is not a moment, it's a season. A season where every choice, every word, every step is scrutinized. It's a test of courage, endurance, and clarity of purpose. I remember walking into rooms filled with people who had once admired me, only to see suspicion in their eyes. They didn't understand that I wasn't rebelling out of pride or stubbornness. I was delivering a truth that didn't belong to me, a message too sacred to dilute for convenience. The system, as I realized, thrives on compromise. It thrives on people who will adjust their words, their morals, their actions for comfort or applause. And when someone refuses, when someone stands firm, the system pushes back harder. There were moments when the pressure was intense. Doors closed that I thought would never close. Opportunities vanished that I had worked for years to secure. Friends became distant. Offers disappeared. It felt like the world was testing every ounce of my resolve. And yet, in that isolation, something remarkable happened. I began to see the difference between loyalty to people and loyalty to purpose. I began to understand that courage is not about facing one enemy. It's about facing every expectation, every temptation, every convenient shortcut that the world presents. Standing alone is uncomfortable. It's exhausting. It challenges your confidence and tempts you to reconsider everything you believed. But it also reveals strength you didn't know existed. It teaches you who is genuine, who is fleeting, and who truly matters. It forces you to confront fear, to push past doubt, and to trust a higher power instead of public opinion. The system can try to intimidate, silence, or redirect you, but if your foundation is built on divine truth, no pressure can shake it, no isolation can weaken it, and no opposition can make you forget why you began. When you give up everything the world offers, you might think you are losing, but what you gain is far greater than anything they could have given you. The freedom that comes from walking in alignment with God's message cannot be measured by money, status, or approval. It is a power that no one can take away, a peace that no one can disrupt, and a confidence that no one can shake. Once you stop chasing the applause and start serving the truth, life changes in ways that are invisible to those still bargaining for comfort. You begin to move with purpose rather than reaction, with clarity rather than fear, and with strength rather than hesitation. I started to notice doors opening, not the flashy doors with immediate recognition or applause, but doors that led to impact, influence, and change in ways that mattered. People came into my life not because of what I could give them or how I could benefit them, but because they recognized something genuine. The message I carried began to resonate in places I never expected, in hearts I never planned to touch, and that, more than anything, reinforced the truth that giving up everything wasn't a loss. It was an investment in something eternal. The victories aren't always public. They aren't announced with headlines or celebrated with fanfare. Often, they are quiet moments where you see the result of your obedience in the life of someone else, in the transformation of a community, or in the growth of a movement that started with a single, uncompromised truth. That is where the real reward lies, not in the approval of people, but in knowing you stayed true when the world tried to convince you otherwise. There is a power that comes from authenticity, a kind of strength that cannot be faked or borrowed. It's the strength to stand firm, the courage to face criticism, and the wisdom to know that what you carry is bigger than any temporary setback. When you commit fully to the message God has shown you, fear loses its grip, doubt loses its voice, and temptation loses its appeal. You begin to live with a clarity that others can only envy, a sense of direction that no distraction can derail, and a resilience that grows with every challenge you face. Giving up everything they offered me didn't make me weaker. It made me unstoppable. It didn't isolate me. It connected me to a source of power, guidance, and purpose far beyond what the world could ever provide. Every sacrifice, every moment of doubt, every door that closed led me to a place where the message I carry could thrive, reach, and transform. It is in that giving up that I found a life I never imagined, a life defined not by worldly success, but by divine fulfillment.